Welcome to the Deep Dive. Today we're plunging into a book that, well, it didn't just spark a conversation. It really fundamentally shifted how millions of people, like all around the world, think about wealth and their financial future. It challenged the whole idea of what it means to be rich.
Oh, absolutely. It became this huge cultural phenomenon, didn't it?
Yeah.
Really influenced discussions everywhere, from kitchen tables right into business schools, got people questioning that conventional financial wisdom.
Totally. So our mission today is to really unpack Rich Dad, Poor Dad by Robert Kiyosaki.
Yeah.
We're going to explore its core philosophies, understand those deceptively simple but powerful lessons, dig into why it hit home for so many, and importantly, take a critical look at its limitations too.
Right. And for this deep dive, we've looked at a pretty detailed review and pulled excerpts straight from the book itself to ground our discussion.
Good stuff. So the book's premise is really unique, isn't it? That's what sets the stage. Kiyosaki talks about growing up with these two really contrasting father figures.
Yeah, polar opposites in their financial thinking.
Exactly. So first, there's his biological father, the poor dad, highly educated guy, right?
Yeah.
But he valued job security above everything, believed in that traditional path, good education, stable career, working for the paycheck.
The safe route, basically. And then you have the rich dad. Now, this was his best friend's father. Self-made, incredibly financially literate, but sort of outside the typical system.
Right, not the academic type, but he taught Kiyosaki about money, investing, entrepreneurship, all in a really practical, hands-on way.
And it's that contrast, that fundamental difference between those two mindsets that forms the philosophical backbone of the whole book, really.
It really does. And it kind of forces you, the listener, to ask yourself, okay, is the way I've always thought about money, is it actually getting me where I want to go long-term?
Mm-hmm. A fundamental question.
So let's get into the heart of this key lessons.
Mm-hmm.
He kicks off with something pretty provocative about financial education, or maybe the lack of it.
Yes, the big gap. Kiyosaki makes this bold claim, the lack of money is the root of all evil. He's not saying money itself is evil, but that not understanding it, not having that financial literacy taught in schools, that's the problem.
That's what traps people.
Exactly. He argues schools teach you how to be a good employee, maybe, but not how to manage money effectively. So financial literacy becomes this, absolutely crucial skill for any real success.
That is a huge claim. Why do you think, then, that our traditional education system mostly skips it? What are the sort of knock-on effects of leaving that out for most people?
Well, I think the system is geared towards producing workers.
Yeah.
Right? Not necessarily independent financial thinkers. And the implication is that without those practical skills, budgeting, investing basics, understanding debt, people are just left vulnerable. It's a massive gap Kiyosaki points right at.
Okay, so building on that foundation of needing financial literacy, he introduces probably his most famous concept, the one that really makes you rethink every single purchase.
Yes, assets versus liabilities.
Right. A lot of people think they get it, but his definition is different. What is it, and why is it such a game changer?
So this is the classic line. The rich buy assets. The poor only have expenses. The middle class buys liabilities they think are assets. Simple, but powerful.
Okay, break that down. What's an asset in his world?
For Kiyosaki, an asset is anything that puts money in your pocket. Think, rental properties, bringing cash, stocks, paying dividends, maybe a business that generates profit without you having to be there 24/7.
And liabilities.
Liabilities take money out of your pocket. So your car payments, credit card debt, maybe even that fancy TV, and controversially, sometimes even your own home, if all it does is cost you money in mortgage, taxes, upkeep, and isn't generating income.
So it's really about cash flow, isn't it? Not just ownership. That simple idea just flips your perspective. You start looking at everything asking, is this making me money or costing me money?
Precisely. It challenges that ingrained idea that, say, owning a home is automatically a good financial move. It can be, but only if you understand its actual impact on your cash flow, not just its potential resale value down the line.
That perspective shift is huge. And it leads directly into his critique of the rat race. He's got that quote, most people work just hard enough not to get fired and get paid just enough money not to quit. Ouch.
Yeah, it's a pretty brutal description, but it paints a picture, doesn't it? This endless cycle. Work, pay bills, trapped until retirement, just hoping you saved enough.
And his solution is?
Break free. Through entrepreneurship, through investing in those income-generating assets we just talked about, build streams of income outside of just your job.
It's a compelling image, the rat race. And that pressure for job security, even in a soul-crushing job, feels very real for a lot of folks. But is breaking free actually realistic for everyone? Or is this message really for a specific kind of person?
Well, Kiyosaki would likely say it starts with the mindset, which is accessible to everyone. Recognizing the trap is step one. Then it's about strategically building the skills and the assets you need to eventually gain control. It might not happen overnight, but the potential is there.
Which ties into that next lesson, doesn't it? Work to learn, not to earn.
Exactly. He contrasts the two dads again. Job security meant everything to my educated dad. Learning meant everything to my rich dad. It's a different focus.
So if the paycheck isn't the main goal, what does work to learn look like in practice? I mean, people have bills to pay, right?
Right.
How does he square that?
Yeah, it's not about working for free, obviously. It's about being strategic. Maybe take a sales job, not because the base pay is amazing, but because, learning to sell is a crucial skill for any business you might start later.
Okay. So you're acquiring skill assets.
Right. You're building your toolkit, sales, marketing, negotiation, understanding systems. These things empower you to create wealth down the line, maybe more so than just climbing the ladder in one specific job for slightly higher paychecks.
It's a very entrepreneurial way of thinking about your career path.
Definitely. And that brings us to the mindset stuff, the psychology. Kiyosaki really digs into fear. He says the primary difference between a rich person and a poor person is how they manage fear.
That's interesting. It's not about not having fear, but managing it.
Correct. He identifies fear of losing money, fear of failure, plus things like cynicism, laziness, bad habits, arrogance as these major roadblocks. It's about your emotional response to risk and opportunity.
So getting your head right is just as important, maybe even more important than the technical know-how.
That's a huge part of his message. You need that mindset shift to take calculated risks, to think like an investor and not just react emotionally or stick to what feels safe, but might be limiting you. You have to confront your own baggage around money.
Okay, so it's clear the book struck a chord. Let's dig into why. Analyzing the impact. What were its biggest strengths? Why did millions connect with it?
Well, number one has to be accessibility, right? The way it's written, almost like a story, not a dense finance text.
Yeah, the two dads narrative makes it really easy to follow. Even if you know nothing about finance going in, it feels more like a conversation.
Totally. It demystifies things. And tied to that is the message itself. It's genuinely empowering. It's not just get rich quick. It's more about taking control, thinking for yourself about money and the systems around it.
That idea of financial independence and questioning the status quo, that's powerful stuff.
It really is. And again, that two dads framework just simplifies these big concepts. Assets, cash flow, mindset, makes them super relatable.
And even if the concepts are basic, like buy assets or educate yourself, they're actionable starting points. For someone feeling completely lost, it gives them a direction, plants that seed.
Definitely provides that initial spark. But okay, let's flip the coin. The book isn't without its critics, and for good reason sometimes. A major one is the lack of specifics.
Right. It's big on philosophy, but if you want a step-by-step guide on how to invest in real estate or stocks, you won't find it here. Why is that a problem?
Well, it can leave readers motivated, but kind of stranded. You're fired up to buy assets, but how? Which ones? How do you analyze a deal? That lack of practical guidance can be frustrating, or worse, lead people to jump into things without enough knowledge.
And then there's the oversimplification issue. Some critics say it makes things too black and white, like real estate always good, jobs always bad.
Yeah, and the financial world is just way more nuanced than that, isn't it? A job, for instance, while maybe not an asset in his terms, is usually the engine that provides the capital to buy assets. Dismissing it entirely isn't helpful for most people.
And it ignores the fact that some jobs do offer great benefits, stability, and even pathways to wealth building, like stock options or pensions.
Exactly. Life is complex. Another point people raise is the authenticity of Rich Dad. Was he a real person? Or just a literary device?
Does it matter if the lessons are sound?
Well, for some readers, it does. The personal story is so central to the book's appeal. So if that feels fabricated, it can undermine the whole thing. For others, though, the principles are the point, regardless of the narrator's specific biography.
Fair enough. And one more criticism, maybe the most important, is that it encourages risk-taking, which is fine, but maybe underplays the actual risks involved and the need for serious due diligence.
Right. It can make investing sound a bit too easy, maybe, without hammering home how much research, risk management, and frankly, sometimes luck is involved.
Which is why it's so crucial, isn't it, when you consume any financial advice, to really think critically, get multiple perspectives, and not just take one book as gospel.
Absolutely essential, especially when your own money is on the line. You need diverse sources, maybe even professional advice, before making big moves. No single book has all the answers.
Okay, so despite the criticisms, the impact is just massive. You mentioned over 40 million copies sold worldwide.
40 million. It's staggering for a finance book. It genuinely sparked this global wave of interest in financial education and investing, reaching people who'd never picked up a finance book before.
And the legacy goes way beyond the book, right? There's the whole series, the cash flow board game.
Which is actually a pretty clever teaching tool in itself.
Yeah, seminars, the whole brand. It's even used in some financial literacy programs, which is interesting given the criticisms.
It's a real double-edged sword, isn't it? Praise for opening eyes, but also cautioned against by some professionals for potentially promoting overly aggressive or simplistic approaches.
So if we're summarizing the deep dive based on the sources, Rich Dad, Poor Dad offers this really powerful mindset shift. It's controversial, sure, but its strength lies in making complex ideas accessible and inspiring people through that narrative style.
Yeah, it's definitely not the detailed roadmap, but more like the initial spark. The wake-up call for many people to start thinking differently about money and taking their financial education seriously.
So who should read it then? Who benefits most?
I'd say definitely beginners. People who need that fundamental mindset shift about money. Young adults, students maybe, who just didn't get any financial education. And yeah, employees who feel stuck in that rat race and are looking for inspiration to start investing or thinking entrepreneurially.
It's that entry point, that catalyst.
Exactly. It opens the door to a different way of thinking.
Okay, so to wrap up, here's a thought to leave you with, building on the core message, but maybe taking it a step further. If the main lesson is about building assets, how do you figure out what an asset truly means for your life, for your own values, beyond just the financial gain?
That's a great question. Because wealth isn't just numbers, right? It's about what those numbers enable.
Mm-hmm. And if you want to explore further after listening, some great complimentary reads could be The Millionaire Next Door by Thomas Stanley, that looks at the actual habits of wealthy people.
Or The Psychology of Money by Morgan Housel, which is brilliant on the behavioral side of things. Your Money or Your Life by Vicki Robin offers a really interesting perspective on aligning money with life energy and values.
And for maybe more advanced practical investing insights, Benjamin Graham's The Intelligent Investor is still a classic, though it's definitely a heavier read.
Lots to dig into if this sparked your interest.